Good morning and welcome to Cheche, the show where opinion counts, live on Citizen TV. I'm your host, Udwaka Mimo. Now, our news lately has been dominated by the opposition proposed referendum. And last week, we heard arguments against the vote, touching on timing, cost and issues from an opponent, the majority leader in the National Assembly, the Honorable Aden Duale. So today's Cheche focuses on the case for the referendum with one of its main proponents, the Honorable Bonny Khalwale, Senator for Kakamega and Chair of the Senate Committee on County Public Accounts and Investments. Also with us, as usual, panelists Mutegi Njau of Royal Media Services and political analyst David Makali. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
And thank you for making time for us here on Cheche today. So why do you think a referendum is necessary?
Is simply because we are actualizing that which we all agreed as proponents for the new constitution and opponents of the same during the last referendum. The no team said 20% of the draft was wrong and that we shouldn't go for the referendum until after the 20% had been sorted out. And as we said, yes, 20% is wrong, but let us adopt the document and make it soon after. So now we are currently actualizing that common ground.
But is that honest? I don't think you're honest. Is the 20% what we're dealing with when you look at the four proposed issues that the Okoa Kenya has listed?
Yes.
Are those the 20% that were wrong?
It is very difficult for one to say scientifically that that represents 20% because there has been nobody who was asked to go and do a total audit of the entire document.
So why don't you do the audit first?
It is because of the challenges that we are faced at the moment. The challenges that we have is such that even if you delay to do that audit, Kenyans will be going through the consequences of those challenges. Have on mind issues of security, or rather insecurity. This is an issue we shall put to the people during the referendum. We are proposing that the president should be in charge of the National Security Council and the governor to be in charge of the County Security Council, so that this new officer called County Commissioner can go away together with the provincial administration, and the structures below the County Commissioner to report to the governor. The importance of this is that when the county police officer, the county administration police officer, the county NIS officer, and the county, when these people, they sit, then they report every Monday, for example, to the governor, and the governor will be hands-on in every county on a regular basis. But when it waits for the president, and it's all the way at the top, it doesn't make...
But you have the county commissioner.
Yeah, we are saying county commissioner is the wrong person, because the county commissioner is an appendage of the national government. And if we are supposed to respect the independence of the two governments, then let the governor be in charge of the county security and the president the national security, and to be interrelated to the extent that the intelligence that is given to the president from that county is the same intelligence that is given to the governor in that county.
The argument
that is a real issue.
That will need a lot of reorganization of the reporting channels. For example, the operations of the police. Will they respond or be answerable to the governor, or will still have the reporting line to the Inspector General of Police as well as the other?
Yes, experts are going to work on this, but the general overview that we have is that in this kind of arrangement, then the regular police in blue uniform will report all the way up to the national, but the administration police, because they are for purposes of implementing administrative issues, they end at the office of the governor. And then the same administration police, they can be trained to take care of traffic. There's no point of using regular police to do traffic in Kisumu. The governor can handle his own traffic using the administration police, use those administration police for matters of security and so on. But the regular police to report to the county and up to the national. And it's not too difficult. It's a question of just creating the proper chain of command. Once the chain of command is there, people will just respect it and things will be smooth.
A few days ago, we had 2 experts here at this table.
Yes.
And we analyzed those 4 issues that have been listed by Kenya.
Yes.
And the argument was none of those things need to go through a referendum. They could be done through legislation and mutual respect between leaders.
Very true.
And what we lack in this country is leadership in both groups.
Exactly. I wouldn't agree with them more. But the reality is that you are faced with a rogue National Assembly. A National Assembly that meets to take a position before they take a vote. So they sit and they are told, you go and vote this way. So you can have a very noble amendment that is supposed to go through, like this issue of security. But if the president doesn't like it and the deputy president doesn't like it, they have the majority, they'll tell them, we don't want to hear of that thing. And the deputy president has been very generous. He doesn't make it a secret. He says as much that we are not supporting. One would have expected that if the principle of separations of powers was respected, then Kenyans would be walking into their sitting rooms waiting to see how Parliament will vote, not knowing how the outcome will be. But in Kenya, it is fait accompli.
But court has made the same argument because, of course, we know that the vote needs support from 24 counties, and we've heard the same argument from court saying we have 27 governors, and so therefore we're sure that our side will win.
Yeah, I think you should understand court on that score. What they are saying is that it's not that they are going to dictate members of their county assemblies. They are saying at least at the devolved level we have a chance, but at the national level you have no chance.
How do you arrive at that argument?
Yes, I arrived at
it. It by the same rationale of the dictatorship of the institutions that they belong to, that nationally Jubilee dictates in the National Assembly.
Yes.
At the county level, code dictates, therefore, at the counties that they dominate or their majority.
Your assumption how you arrive at that.
Yes. Your assumption is correct. But you see, the MCS, because they are on a daily basis with wananchi at the grassroots, they rise to the realities on the ground faster than members of parliament who live in Nairobi. To this extent that even as the posturing has been going on, you have seen clearly in Rift Valley, starting with the Bomet, Uasin Gishu, Nandi, and so on, the leadership there is clear that we are for the referendum, because they are aware that wananchi are taking the issues that we have raised as the opposition seriously. It is also easier.
That is also manipulative.
That's a different
referendum. Because in any case,
no, the referendum is the same to the extent that what drives the referendum is the content. So the content of what is being proposed by the governors and the content of ours is such that they converge.
Okay,
we are not going to have two referenda.
Let's retrace our steps, because last year, when the Senate mooted the idea of a referendum, there was bipartisan agreement that you might need a referendum to talk about the powers and various other things. You actually told off Cord and Cord leader Raila Odinga, asking him to keep off the referendum. So at what point did your interests converge?
Exactly. The referendum of the Senate then was limited to only two things. The first one was the issue of funding of the county governments, and the second one was to remove the ambiguity between the two houses by making...
Enhance your powers.
Yeah, making the Senate an upper house. That was as simple as that. But why I told the former Prime Minister to keep off, and I still stand by that, is because he then wanted another agenda to write on the back of those two popular initiatives, i.e. to move from presidential system to parliamentary system. And having been in this parliament this long, I know that that is an issue that can divide Kenya in a manner that you have never seen. And in the process, we lose on the possibility of making gains on a noble thing like funding the government, making the Senate an upper house, and the other things that we are saying. In fact, there are people who are currently proposing that to the committee of experts, but we as members of the political council of Kenya, we are repeatedly saying that this should not be allowed to be part of the agenda. Because the moment it comes, we fall into the hands of our detractors who will say, all along, you wanted to change the system of governance so that you have a better chance of winning.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've talked about security. Take us through the other issues.
Yes. The other issue that we think is very important is electoral reforms. All Kenyans are agreed that on the day we took the vote in March last year, it was chaotic in polling stations. An illiterate voter, an assisted voter, an elderly voter being asked to make a decision within a period of around 5 minutes 6 times. Vote for the president, the governor, the senator, the MP, the woman rep, and the MCA was too cumbersome. So we need electoral reforms such that we stagger some of these elections. We can make the election of the executive arm of government, namely the governor and the president, to be on a separate day, and the election for the legislative arm of government, MCA, MP, and senator, to be on a different day.
Does that have to be done through a referendum?
Yes.
Why?
Yes, the Constitution says when you want to change the structure. Yes, yes. So we would be changing, so you have to do through a referendum. Now, the wisdom of this is as follows, and I speak honestly because I can be challenged. When you are doing this vote 6 times, the local people are more excited about their MCA, their MP, and their senator and governor. The moment these people are announced, they walk away from the polling station and they leave the polling station, including agents. Now, unscrupulous returning officers and presiding officers then use that opportunity to interfere with the electoral process, staffing boards and so on. I'll give you an example. There's a polling station in Kakamega County called Kuyani. Because I had an easy win, after I realized that I had won by a landslide, I decided not to sit and monitor the tallying. So I started moving around.
Celebrating.
I arrived, yes?
Celebrating.
No, I wanted to find out what is happening to the presidential vote, because I was leading Mudavadi's presidential interest at the election. So I went to the farthest end, the northern end of Kakamega County, called Likuyani, at Nangiri Secondary School. And I found the polling station had been deserted. There were only 2 people remaining there. Dr. Kibunguchi, because he was guarding Raila's votes, and a young man called Gabriel Sakali. You know him, the brown young man. And there was this lady from Mount Elgon who had refused for the last 5 hours from announcing the presidential result. And preliminary results we had seen, Raila had scored 28,000, Kibunguchi had scored 22,000, had scored 23,000, Oparanya had scored 23,000. Now, when they announced, we know that Raila had scored 28,000. When they announced from Nairobi, Raila scores 25,000. So we realized, if he has lost 3,000 votes in one polling station, how about if you multiply with the interference with the possibility of half the polling stations in Kenya or all the polling stations in Kenya? So if we correct this, it means if you separate, if I'm not a presidential candidate, I am done, I'm not a candidate, I go to Kiambu and I be in charge of the presidential candidate of my preferred candidate. Mtu anaweza leta nyenye, na mimi nitakuwa nimekuja hapa na bullfighters. And things will work very well. Then, on the issue of electoral reform, there's need also for the presidential result not to be announced from Nairobi. It should be announced at the county tallying center, so that once in the county tallying center they say he has scored 500,000 votes, that must be repeated in Nairobi, because it is during that transmission that interference then takes place. I can assure you there was interference of votes, and I've given you the example of Likuyani. Probably, as I saw Raila fighting in the Supreme Court, As I was waiting to see the returning officer, what they would say about Likuyani. These things are real. Unless we don't want to grow a community called Kenya, these are the things that can make our country burst. Okay. Electoral reforms.
Inclusivity.
Right. So you've taken us through electoral reforms. Next?
Yes. The next thing is land reforms. Yes, in the current constitution, we have said that the National Land Commission is responsible. But you can see there's been a lot of interference from one, Charity Ngilu, and the president himself. So we have now to solidify the provision, whatever the lawyer, however the lawyers will put it, so that no other person other than the National Land Commission will be responsible of matters of land. Let me tell you, most of us are old enough to know that not Kenyatta, not Moi, not Kibaki ever went to the National Lands Office the way President Uhuru marched in. We wondered, what was he going to do? Was he going to look at the title deeds and documents and green cards of his own properties, or was he going there to look at whose? Because he's the custodian of the interests of all of us. These things are not a child's play. We said repeatedly that the problems in Lamu had something to do with land, and people thought it was a joke. And we have said repeatedly that there must be willingness from the side of the president to implement the TJRC report, which speaks to historical land injustices, and the Ndungo report. Unless you do this, you can change the cabinet secretary, you can play around with the constitution, it will not work. But if we make the National Land Commission strong enough, then it will have an opportunity to do exactly what I'm speaking to.
Why do you think that the president, sorry, we'll go to the fourth point, yes. But why do you think the president going to the lands registry is suspect?
Yeah, it is suspect.
In what sense?
Those of us who are opposed to his leadership, because we think we would have offered better leadership, we were not represented. How do you shut off the National Registry of Land, knowing how emotive the land issue is? And if it's lost on Kenyans, may I remind them that the land registries that Charity Ngilu has been shutting down are areas where we think there are historical land injustices. She shut down the national one, she shut down the one of Kwale, she shut down the one of Lamu and Malindi, and those are areas where upcountry people, without any shame, went there and decided ancestral land was their land. So we have formed the National Land Commission to address those things. If somebody rightfully acquired land, it will not be taken away. It is a process. But then when Ngilu goes there and says, I will give title deeds without going through the due process, those young people, they might be children of the poor, but they're just as men as my children, me who has children of a parent who has succeeded. They'll one day use raw force, and that is physical violence. These are not things you can wish away. They are not things you can pretend. They are real.
But Ngilu has been claiming she has been successful in finding corruption in that area. If she has thrown away all the brokers, she has found the files that are lost, and they're hundreds. So why do you fault her?
Yes, I'm waiting to see the evidence. I have been chair of public accounts, and I have on many occasions, I had an opportunity on many occasions to see ministers, just like Ngilu, brag the way she's bragging. And now when I faced them with audited reports, you find she was just playing propaganda or politics. So I'm waiting for a time when she'll come to be accountable for her actions. And that time is coming, for real. So I don't believe her. It was wrong for them to shut down registries. It is very dangerous because some of those titles have secured loans. Banks.
Isn't there anything that Parliament or the Senate can do about that, apart from, observing like other citizens who are helpless?
Yes, Parliament is trying, but as I said at the beginning, and with utmost respect, most of this work under the current arrangement of the Constitution has been put in the hands of the National Assembly. But the National Assembly has opened itself to manipulation, with due respect to my colleagues. They have opened themselves to it. Unfortunately, when I look at colleagues in the Senate, they are not manipulated. And I had an opportunity to prove this when we were trying to impeach the deputy governor of Machakos. The Jubilee side of the Senate that thought it was wrong, they simply walked out and they didn't want to be involved. And the 5 who were there, the 7 who were there, 2 voted with us and 5 voted for the removal. So that maturity in the Senate is useful. And maybe it is because majority of us who are in the Senate, we have many years of political practice in our lives. And maybe we have, shall I say, we have something to prove from experience.
Yeah.
And
so just to be clear, what you're saying is that the National Assembly is corrupt and the Senate isn't?
Well, I have no scientific measure of the same, but with the experience I have, I know the body language of people who have been influenced. And I've been seeing that body language in the National Assembly. Let me tell you, like the investment of Westgate,
Investigation.
The investigation of Westgate when we were bombed. The joint chairs of the committees that were investigating actually cleared the senior police and military officers before the end of the report. And yet, they should have done that in their report. The report be tabled in Parliament, it is debated, and if adopted, it is when it becomes the position of the committee and the position of Parliament. But they cleared. Isn't
it the job of a committee to come up with the findings? If they found them to be innocent or to have
I think that the point he's making is the time frame.
They cleared them before they concluded the investigation. Before they concluded the investigation.
But then we also need to be careful because they're not here to defend themselves. What are you saying? That they were influenced? That they were corrupt?
It would be nice for them to come out clear. And they are my colleagues, like Honorable Kamama. The other Honorable Kidenji is new. I would forgive him. But Honorable Kamama knows that what I'm saying is the procedure.
They even, I suppose, have toured the DOD to do more investigations there.
They should have investigated before they cleared these guys. So it will be useful for him to come before the public the way I'm doing and tell us what prompted him on such a sensitive issue. Unless we want to play around with the lives of our children and poor Kenyans.
Okay, the point about lands where we were, if we may go back there. Yes. And your apparent spectator position, when you're supposed to be engaged in checking what you think is wrong within the implementation or performance of those functions of the lands, around lands, by the National Lands Commission and the Ministry.
Yes.
Are you saying there's nothing that can be done? It has to be, these are ongoing things. You're saying, like me, I would say, okay, stop interfering with other people's mandates. But you, in your position, politically and within your senatorial position, you cannot.
I have a platform, just like my many other colleagues, to address these things. But by way of legislation, which is really the crux of the matter, one requires that the House, which is mandated by law to do what it's supposed to do it. And this is why we are saying in this referendum, all bills emanating from the National Assembly must come to the Senate. Nikisema kwa Kiswahili ili tusipigie msasa. And that's what an upper house is all about. So if this was a proviso, then some of the difficult decisions that they have been making, including what they decided about the media, and I think you guys have a direct interest there, it would have found its way to the Senate, and the Senate would have pronounced itself.
Okay, we've got to take a break now.
Yes.
Please make the final point.
Yes.
We've done security, electoral reforms, land reform.
Yes.
The fourth issue.
There is the issue of equity and inclusivity. If you look at the public service, God loves this country. That children come from the university, and a boy from Sirisia in Bungoma, who was a classmate with another one from Tokoto here in Kiambu, and they scored the same marks, or the one from Sirisia did even better. This one from Sirisia with the same degree like this boy stays on the streets for 5 years, and they still remain peaceful, and some of them become border writers God loves this country. You cannot have a civil service in a multi-ethnic society like Kenya, where jobs are dominated by one ethnic community. Are you saying
no unemployed people graduate from Kiambu for that matter?
Many. They are there. But I'm speaking to the issue, and I want you to follow my English. The issue of equity. So we have to deliberately put it in law so that probably communities can be given quotas in the civil service. You don't do it, we are just postponing what will eventually happen. And let us be honest. The truth is, the defense sector from the top is in the hands of one ethnic community. The finance sector from the top is in the hands of one ethnic community. The internal security is in the hands of one ethnic community, and so is immigration. Don't play with this. I would rather I be called somebody who is a monger for hate speech, the way they are calling me, but addressing these issues.
But the statistics may not be true. It's a perception.
True. It's not a perception. If this program allows me, I can slowly give names and positions of how one ethnic community controls these departments. That is not building Kenya. And you cannot say it, Adwok can't, Young Makali cannot say, me, I have a political platform, I should use it. If I fail to use it, then I'm being a coward of men. And cowards of men are the ones who keep quiet when a wrong is being done.
Okay, I have to take a break now, so we'll come back to the issue of equity and inclusivity after the break. Stay with us here on Cheche. We're live on Citizen TV, and we're discussing arguments for the referendum with Senator Bonny Khalwale. Your opinions and questions do matter to us here at Citizen TV, so do send them to SMS number 22422, or you can tweet us. Our handle is @Cheche_TV.